What is DNA? Are we really that different from a dog? What about a banana? How much do you know about genetic modification? DNA expert Robin explains.
Disclaimer, not a real expert.
Hi, and welcome to our program. Today we have a very special guest, DNA expert Robin. Welcome, Robin.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.
I'm definitely the expert here.
So let's start by defining DNA.
Okay. So the DNA is the stuff that is in all our cells that defines who we are. Both how we look like and also how we behave, and that we have 2 arms and 2 legs and that we are humans. That's all in our genetic code.
Okay.
And this stuff we find in every single cell of our body. Mm-hmm. So if you look at the structure, if you would really zoom in with a microscope, it would look like something like this. And we actually only know this since the 50s that it has this kind. Maybe you saw this shape before, like this double spiral.
Yeah. I think a lot of people see it, but we don't really understand what is happening there.
Okay, yeah. let me talk you through what it is. So these iron parts that you see here on the sides, that's actually kind of the backbone, the structure that keeps it all together. Where we keep the information that's really in the middle of it. So this is just phosphates and some sugars that keep it together. And what we see here, these colored pieces, that's what we call the base pairs. And a base is, you can see it as one of 4 basic letters. As a computer works with zeros and 1, a genetic code works with 4 different letters. And maybe I can just write those down because...
So all the information that we have in our body, everything that makes us what we are, is this combination, like 4.
Exactly. It's just 4 letters. It's all about in what order they come and how many times they are repeated and so on. That defines who we are.
That's so weird.
But exactly, it's just think about it as bits in a computer. That's also a lot of zeros and ones. But you can make you can see a beautiful image on your picture, which is just on your computer, which is just zeros and ones. Just if you have a lot of it, and the computer knows how to process it, you can make something beautiful out of it. And you can also make something beautiful out of this long strain of DNA. So yeah, this is a very short piece of it, and as I said, it contains the information. These are the basic bits. So let's say that the blue one is a T, for example, then it will always try to combine with an A. And that's why you see these 2 different colors. So the reason why it's made like this is just to protect itself, basically. So to have a structure that consists of 2 strains. So it's actually two strains of half of a DNA that function together, and that then tangle together, exactly. But if we really want to read it and we want to know what it is about, we have to take it apart and then read the different letters here. So, for example, this might be T, A, what else? G. What did I say here? T, T. So this might be a string of letters. Okay. That says nothing on its own, but if you have a very long string of it, it can have a code to make a certain protein.
Okay. How long are we talking about?
Yeah, it's pretty damn long. So what we have here is a long rope. Yeah, you can hold on the other side. This is around 2 meters, but this is the length that our DNA is in one of our cells. So if we would just take like a piece of our skin cell or so in this cell, or just a piece of our hair or whatever, then in this cell you have, if you would put all the DNA next to each other, you would have a string of 2 meters long.
Wow.
Which is completely crazy for just such a small cell, right? It's not this thick as the wire that I have here. Our DNA is actually only around 2 nanometers wide. So that's even 20,000 times smaller than one of our hairs, the thickness of our hair. So it's really, really, really small, but it's really long if you disentangle it. it isn't like this in our cells. So we have our DNA is actually there in bunches, and they coil all up in what we call chromosomes. So these chromosomes is where where our cells know where the information is exactly stored. But put after each other, it would be like a 2-meter string.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are genes then? Where does this enter here?
Yeah, that's a very good point. So I've been talking about the bits. I've been talking about the ones and zeros. But if you put a long string of ones and zeros after each other, or these 4 letters after each other, then it can say what kind of protein that you want to make. And a protein is basically the building block, let's say, of our bodies. So there can be a certain gene that says to make a protein that make your muscles bigger or whatever. This kind of protein, when it is, or this kind of gene, when it is expressed, it makes a lot of this protein.
So, just to be clear, a gene is just a bunch of these pairs.
Yeah, very good.
Okay.
So let me maybe just go. Let me get this straight. We have in total 3 billion. I need a lot of zeros here. 3 billion of these base pairs.
Yes.
Right? So that's one of these 4 letters. 3 billion of those. We know that only about 1 to 2% of these base pairs is actually important for our genes. So it defines our genetic. Defines our genetics, basically.
So what about the rest?
The rest, we don't really know what it is what it is used for. Scientists have been calling it junk DNA for quite a while. This other 98%, but it's probably it has some function, maybe on a more microscopic level that we don't understand. But it's this 1 to 2% that really defines who we are.
But we know that we need the rest to exist, maybe to be like living beings, but we don't know exactly what it does.
Exactly. Yeah, and some of these parts might also be there by accident. I mean, we have genetic mutations all the time throughout our history as living forms. But
and
all
those things happen in the 1 to 2% or in the junk?
It happens across everywhere.
Okay.
Yeah. So a lot of this junk might also be made up of randomness that happens all the time. But to come to your question, what is a gene? So 1 to 2% of this is what we call our genetic information, and then you end up with taking thousands of these base pairs to millions of these base pairs after each other, and that will say that will have the codes to make a certain protein, for example.
Okay.
And
so you need like millions, maybe, to do one protein?
Yeah, it might be, but it might also be a certain. It might also be thousands of it. I mean, this gene is a certain. It carries some genetic information that is specific for your body, and in total, we can say that we have around 25,000 genes in our body. So 25,000 of these informations on which proteins to make.
Okay,
so
that's
crazy. Yeah, it's still a lot, but it's at least not as much as all the different ones and zeros that you have there.
So all that we know is that 1 to 2%, but is the research focusing on that percentage only, or is also trying to figure out what is happening with the junk DNA? Yeah,
so most of it, like let's say that you have a certain disease or that you develop in a different way from other humans or whatever, then it would be information that is stored in this 1 to 2%. Okay. So that's what people are mostly looking at if we want to change anything or if we want to understand human behavior better, or any animal or life form, let's say, then we would be looking at these 1 to 2%.
Okay.
We are definitely also looking into what these other base pairs are doing there, but this might be this might be a much longer study. Remember that this is only around 70 years ago that scientists discovered that it looks like this and what it is about. So we're still learning a lot about it. To give you an idea about it, so the human DNA is only mostly figured out in the year 2000, and only very recently we figured out the whole human genome.
Can you define figure out?
So figure out means that we read the whole we read the whole 2 meter line.
You read it, but you don't know what it does.
Exactly. Yeah. So you know the ones and zeros, but actually it starts by understanding what proteins does it make and what does it do exactly in our body.
So let's talk about ancestry. How does DNA define what we have in common with our parents?
Yeah. So the DNA that we get is the DNA that we have is 50% coming from our mother, 50% coming from our father. So if there's certain
Is it like this part is coming from our father and that part comes from our mother, and they just
No, not really. So it's what I said. Like this, the DNA all after each other is like a 2 meter string, but actually in our cells it's cut up in certain pieces.
Okay.
And we have in total a number of chromosomes that say that define who we are. 23 of those chromosomes come from our father. 23 come from our mother. And these chromosomes might carry the same kind of information.
Okay.
But it's actually these two that come together that define on who we are in total.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just two?
I mean, from every chromosome we have like one part coming from mother, one part coming from father.
Okay.
So
okay.
yeah. So the 23 and 23 adds up to 46.
Okay. And I also heard that baldness comes from your mother's side. How
true
is this?
We have a lot of these common sayings that there is a certain gene that is specific for how we look. Like for example, eye color is the same thing. It's something that can be very apparent. You can see how the eye color of your parents, and then see how your eye color looks the same.
We learned this diagram or some, I don't remember the name, in high school.
So, but most of the time it's not as easy. For example, this eye color, it's actually dependent on 8 different genes. So not one single one that comes from the father and one single one that comes from the mother. But it really depends on what on different genes, and the same with baldness. There's not some easy rule of thumb that says, okay, you're bald, so it means that from your mother's side they were bald people.
Okay, so this is not accurate.
It's not really accurate to say it like that. There are only a few certain things that are really dependent on single genes that are easy to say. For example, your blood type. That's something that you can pretty easily track down to what your mother and father are. Do you know by any chance what your blood type is?
No.
Okay.
Should I? I should.
So my blood type, for example, is a B.
Okay.
B positive. But let's look at this first letter B. It on your chromosomes can either be written that you are A, that you're B, or that you're O. And if you get an A from the mother and a B from the father, then you become AB. If you get a B from mother and B from father, then you become B. If you have a B from the mother and an O from the father, then the B and the O combines actually to a B, because this O is...
That was unexpected.
Exactly. A and B are both very dominant, but the O is not. So the O just has to decide what the other one is doing. Only when you get an O and an O, you end up with a blood type O. Okay. So something like this is very easily traceable to what are the traits from my parents. How does it add up when I just add these two values? But baldness, you don't have a yes and a no for baldness and then add up like as a maybe. Doesn't work that easily.
Okay, so you cannot just change one gene and then something happens.
And solve completely a certain issue. Most of the time, not. You can change your tendency towards some sort of disease. Some diseases are just managed by a mistake in your genes that you could change, let's say. But a lot of these physical traits are actually based on so many different genes at the same time. But one that is not is right next to you there. So I brought. Do you know what it is?
Yes, it's coriander.
Yeah, exactly. You were smelling it already before. Yeah. So what do you think that it tastes like?
Well, for me, I think it tastes like very similar to the smell, like, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Okay, but let's say let's just take a piece.
Do I have to? Yeah.
Yeah, you have to. For me, it tastes like something very specific. Oh.
It's not that I don't like it, but it's a very particular taste.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, so why did you make me eat this?
Because this is one of the easy things that you can say. Okay, this one gene is specific for how we taste this specific kind of food.
So from everything, tasting coriander is a thing that
coriander. There are some other examples, like asparagus is the same kind. To me, it tastes like soap completely, and that means that specific gene that defines that I taste it like soap is different for you than it is for me.
Yeah.
But a certain percentage of the people, they have this kind of gene, and they taste the same soap as. Why did I taste it myself? I know that.
I still feel it. I'm gonna have this taste in my mouth the whole day.
Yeah.
Nice. So basically, you're saying that the DNA chooses our physical traits, but also like our psychological traits, or like tastes, preferences.
Yeah, definitely.
How does that work?
So it's hard to define what is a real physical and what is a real mental or psychological trait, because they're so intertwined with each other. A physical trait might be a different part of your brain that is bigger or smaller, and that actually defines your personality or defines who you are. So they're very, very much intertwined with each other. But all this information is indeed stored in your DNA. It doesn't necessarily mean that you cannot end up being a different person because of your environment. This is actually a huge debate that has been going on in genetic for a very long time. It's how are you defined? Yeah. Like before, you had two different camps. One saying that it's only nature. One saying that it's only nurture. So only by the genetic code that you carry along, and it doesn't really matter how you're raised. And another camp saying no, it completely defines how you are raised, and whatever your DNA is, it doesn't really matter. You have, of course, the truth lies somewhere in between. Yeah. So you're also really defined by how at a very young age you grow up and so on, and actually until the day of today, the person that you are is not just your DNA, it's also what you experience during your life.
Yeah, so right now we are mostly talking about like human DNA, but what about other living beings' DNA? Like how similar is our DNA to a banana?
That's why it's here. Yeah, okay. So a banana specifically shares 60% of the genes it has with you.
I was not ready for this information.
You're 60% banana. No, but that's this genetic part, right? So not this. You don't have exactly the same base pairs. That's
the junk DNA.
So the junk DNA indeed, it might not be exactly the same as in a banana, but the genes, the part that describe who you are, is 60% the same as in a banana. But it's actually something very normal, because we have the same ancestors as a lot of life forms. We have the same ancestors as bananas for some point, and even later in later in the past, let's say let's say much more recently than now, we come from the same ancestor from monkeys that exist today, and with monkeys we share 99% of our genes. So 99%, you are the same, you carry the same genetic information as a monkey. Doesn't mean that that humans, okay, we share some things with monkeys, definitely. We are a completely different species, but 99% of that information on how we behave is actually similar to monkeys.
So you're 60% banana and 99% monkey.
Yeah, and we are 99.9% the same. Like among different humans, even though you can cross the half the world and then meet someone that you never saw before, you share 99.9% of the genes with that person.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So let's talk about DNA in society. How are we using this knowledge nowadays?
Yeah, in general, we're learning much more about what our DNA makes us as humans and as how we look like. Mm-hmm. But very recently, there is a new kind of technique where we can really change DNA. In a way that we couldn't really do it before. Before it was really like let's say we shine some radioactive material on it and we see that, okay, the DNA changes in some way, there is a random mutation, and if the mutation is good, then we keep it, and otherwise we throw it away.
Okay, that sounds dangerous and a bit irresponsible.
Yeah, well, it was maybe a bit. It was, of course, it was very controlled and so on, but I mean, this is a lot of trial and error.
Yeah.
And this kind of trial and erroring, that's what we have been doing over the last forever as humans. Because, I mean, when let's say that we grow crops and we have two kind of carrots and one looks much bigger than the other one. Maybe that's a random mutation, this big carrot. But if the farmer wants to continue when growing carrots, then it will start off with this ancestor, the big carrot, rather than the small one. That's a kind of genetic selection that we are doing as humans. It's also random mutations coming from nature that we change, but
we can also do it ourselves.
We can also do it ourselves.
So it's just like we go here and we're like poop, and we take this out and we change it.
Kind of, yeah. It's not as easy as we make it sound here, but it's a technique that is actually growing so fast these days, which is called CRISPR, and that's a way of modifying our genetic code, and even in living cells we can do that. So that literally means that we could change a certain disease that is genetically written. We can also change the crops that we have. For example, think about crops that don't need so much pesticides as the crops that we have today. It might be genetically modified organisms that you have to introduce in agriculture, and that's a whole debate on itself. But you can think about many different ways in which you can make a crop work better than what we have today. One of these examples is also a kind of tomato that was lacking a certain vitamin, and a lot of people who ate this tomato, they actually they got some health issues. They even died from deficit of this certain vitamin. But if you just change the genetic code of the tomato, you can make a completely new one, which is much more healthy, and which might, for example, need much fewer land, or which might not need any pesticides, which is better for the environment, and so on and so on.
Okay. So there's, as you said, there's a bit of debate right now about this, and a lot of people are scared of eating this genetically modified food. Yeah. Do you think it makes sense to be scared of it?
It makes definitely sense to always be skeptical about this stuff. Of course, you're gonna change something that is so fundamental to a certain life form. What does it mean when this new kind of tomato spreads and it's not as good as the other one? But let's say that it outcompetes whatever is there in nature. Do we really want to modify our nature around us as well? That's a certain ethical question that you could say. But it doesn't mean that we're not genetically modifying our environment the whole time. As I was saying, choosing between the big and the small carrot is already genetically modifying in some way. I mean, it's not necessarily going to the genes and changing something, but it's changing how we want something to evolve over time.
Yeah.
The same as a breed of dogs, for example. People were breeding dogs for a long time for specific traits that they wanted to have. Mm-hmm. It's random mutations, and it's just a much slower process than saying exactly I want to change this certain gene.
But it's still a modification kind of.
It's still a modification, yeah. and we should always be careful with these kind of things. But actually, this GMOs is what we. In Europe, it doesn't exist so much. There's actually a law which prevents to do that too much. But in the rest of the world, GMOs are actually seeing some benefits in different parts of the world. I talked about this kind of tomato, for example, but it might be a way of, for example, the soy that they grow in the United States is actually soy that can handle a better climate than the one that is grown in the Amazon. So you can stop getting rid of Amazon rainforests and grow your own soy, for example, instead of instead of just doing it the natural way. Okay. So you save nature by doing something not natural.
Okay. Yeah. So right now we are talking more about like food and crops, but can this also be used in humans?
Definitely. And that's even more ethical debate, right? You can decide, okay, I want my kid to not develop cancer, and that might be a very fair point, and you might change something in the DNA code or something that is easier than that. Let's say that you see an unborn child which has a certain disease, you can decide to change it, but where does it stop? Are you also designing the eye color, or are you designing that it should be more muscly than it used to be? It's a very tricky point, and at some point, as humanity, I guess we're gonna get there. But there should be some good rules on, how far we should go with this, I guess.
Yeah, that is very scary to think about, but at the same time it also seems very useful in, for instance, in the case of the diseases, if you could prevent serious diseases. But how does that work? So you like the baby, like the fetus, it's while the baby it's in the fetus mode, kind of?
Yeah. So
or is it before, like how?
Yeah, you could do it. You could do it in certain stages of a human's life. You can decide to do it with the unborn child, with a fetus. You could also do it on a later stage, but it all depends on what kind of gene, and the limit is really the sky is the limit there, I guess, in what you can change.
Now that you touched the point of the sky is the limit, I'm very curious to know if we can make clones. Like, is this possible?
Definitely, we have been making clones as humans. We've been cloning chickens and sheep and so on over the past. And the way that we make a clone is just by taking the genetic material of a certain adult organism and putting it in an embryo, like in a cell that is not. That will become a new sheep, for example. So you take
very complicated.
No, so you take the embryo from from an adult sheep. You take DNA material from another sheep, and you put it in a third sheep. And let it grow to be a lamb that is genetically exactly identical to the one where you took the genetic material from. So this is something that we have been doing for a while, and the reason I say cheap is because there is a very, very famous sheep that we grew in this way. But it's definitely possible in many ways, and for humans it's equally easy to do.
So now, to sum up, we have a fast round of questions.
Good.
Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
Are we 60% banana?
Yes.
Does baldness come from your mother's side?
No.
Can we make clones?
Yeah, definitely.
Is genetically modified fruit the only type of fruit you can eat nowadays?
No. Yeah!
That was it on the brain, on the... shit.
Just pick up and go. Just pick up and go.
Okay, that was it on DNA. Thank you so much for coming, expert Robin.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for staying with us. See you next time.